ExamPrep.School. Rhode Island Property Casualty Insurance Adjuster Exam. Exam code InsRI-PCAdj14 or OPPCAdj14. There are 6 practice exams in this series. This video covers Practice Exam 1. The first 20 questions are free. In this video, we will be covering the following major categories for Practice Exam 1. Adjusting loss, insurance concepts, insurance terms, lines of insurance, coverage, Rhode Island laws, rules and regulations, the insurance contract. Let's walk through the format. I'll read each question and its choices. Let's get started. Question 1. In a property casualty insurance policy, which statement most accurately defines the term risk? A condition or situation that increases the likelihood of a loss. B, the specific cause or event that leads to a loss. C, the uncertainty regarding the occurrence of a potential loss. D, an estimate of the possible financial amount of a loss. A countdown circle appears in the top right. Once it completes, the answer is revealed. You can pause at any time if you'd like, longer to think. If you'd like additional practice covering more topics, see the description for our book. The correct answer is C. The correct answer defines risk as the uncertainty concerning whether a loss will occur, distinguishing it from causes or conditions of loss. Reason A is not correct. This describes a hazard, which is a condition that increases loss likelihood, not the uncertainty itself. Reason B is not correct. This describes a peril, which is the direct cause of loss, not the uncertainty surrounding loss occurrence. Reason D is not correct. This refers to potential loss severity or exposure, not the uncertainty of a loss event. Question 2. Which choice correctly differentiates a peril from a hazard in insurance terminology? A peril is a condition or situation that increases loss likelihood. A hazard is the specific cause of a loss. B, a peril is the cause of a loss, such as fire or theft. A hazard is a condition that increases the chance of that loss. C, a peril is an estimate of potential financial exposure. A hazard is the statistical probability of a loss event. D, a peril is the measure of potential loss severity. A hazard is the premium charged by the insurer. The correct answer is B. The correct answer identifies peril as the actual cause of loss and hazard as the condition that increases the likelihood of that loss. Reason A is not correct. This reverses the definitions of peril and hazard, making it incorrect. Reason C is not correct. These descriptions do not align with standard insurance definitions of peril and hazard. Reason D is not correct. This confuses hazard with premium and mischaracterizes peril. Question 3. Which of the following examples best illustrates a moral hazard rather than a physical hazard? A, neglecting to replace worn roof shingles that can lead to water damage. B, falsifying an insurance claim to receive a larger payout. C, storing flammable liquids without proper containment. D, failure to install a functioning smoke detector in a building. The correct answer is B. The correct answer involves intentional dishonesty by the insured, characteristic of a moral hazard, whereas the other options describe physical conditions that increase loss risk. Reason A is not correct. This is a physical hazard, a condition that increases the chance of loss. Reason C is not correct. This scenario describes a physical hazard due to improper storage. Reason D is not correct. This is a physical hazard resulting from lack of protective equipment. Question 4. Which of the following best describes a property casualty insurance binder and its temporary coverage purpose? A provisional contract that supplies full coverage once the insured pays premiums and underwriting completes. B, a temporary agreement granting provisional coverage until the formal policy is delivered or the binder term expires. C, an acknowledgement of application receipt providing standard coverage for a fixed 10-day period, regardless of policy issuance. D. A conditional promise of coverage effective indefinitely until completion of a post-loss audit of underwriting data. The correct answer is B. This option is correct because it accurately defines a binder as a short-term contract, providing coverage until issuance of the full policy or termination of the binder period. Reason A is not correct. This overstates the requirement for underwriting completion before coverage and implies full coverage only afterward, which is incorrect. Reason C is not correct. This suggests a fixed 10-day period for all binders, whereas actual binder duration varies and ends upon policy issuance or binder expiration. Reason D is not correct. This implies coverage continues indefinitely pending a post-loss audit, which misrepresents the temporary nature of binders. Question 5. Under standard binder provisions for property casualty insurance, coverage provided by a binder typically terminates upon which event? A. When the insurer issues and mails the formal policy declarations to the insured, regardless of the binder expiration date. B. Upon mutual execution of the binder instrument by insurer and insured, without regard to policy inception. C. At the moment the formal policy becomes effective or when the binder term lapses, whichever occurs first. D. When the insured remits the initial premium to the insurer, independent of policy issuance or binder term. The correct answer is C. This option is correct because binder coverage ends either when the full policy takes effect or when the binder period expires, whichever occurs first. Reason A is not correct. Coverage does not wait for mailing of policy declarations alone. Termination is tied to policy effectiveness or binder expiration. Reason B is not correct. Execution of the binder instrument starts coverage rather than ending it, so this does not trigger termination. Reason D is not correct. Payment of premium alone does not automatically terminate binder coverage. Policy issuance or binder lapse does. Question 6. Which of the following statements accurately describes how a deductible applies under a standard property insurance policy? A. It applies separately to each covered loss before the insurer indemnifies the insured. B. It applies only once during the entire policy period, regardless of the number of losses. C. It is subtracted from the coinsurance adjusted loss amount rather than the gross loss. D. It is waived if the claim amount does not exceed the policy's coinsurance requirement. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is that the deductible provision requires the insured to pay the specified amount for each individual covered loss before the insurer pays any indemnity. Reason B is not correct. That description matches a policy period deductible, not the standard per loss deductible in most property policies. Reason C is not correct. Deductible is subtracted from the gross loss amount before any coinsurance adjustment, not after coinsurance. Reason D is not correct. Deductible application does not depend on coinsurance thresholds and is not waived based on coinsurance requirements. Question 7. How much deductible applies to the second claim? A. $2,500. B. $7,000. C. $7,500. D. $2,000. The correct answer is D. Annual aggregate deductibles require the insured to pay losses up to the annual amount before coverage applies. After paying $8,000 on the first claim, $2,000 remains of the annual deductible and applies to the second claim. Reason A is not correct. This reflects the per occurrence deductible amount, not the remaining annual deductible balance. Reason B is not correct. This equals the full second loss amount, failing to account for the remaining deductible. Reason C is not correct. This combines the remaining annual deductible with an extra per occurrence amount, double counting. Question 8. In a named peril property insurance policy, which best defines the coverage trigger? A. Losses are paid only when the cause of loss is among perils specifically enumerated in the policy. B. Losses are covered for any cause unless the cause is specifically excluded in the policy. C. Coverage applies based on a percentage of the insured value after the deductible has been met. D. Payment is determined by the fair market value of the property at the time of loss. The correct answer is A. The correct answer describes that under a named peril policy, the insurer only pays for losses caused by perils specifically listed in the policy, distinguishing it from open peril coverage models. Reason B is not correct. This describes open peril coverage, which covers all causes of loss except for those the policy explicitly excludes. Reason C is not correct. This refers to valuation after deductible application rather than identifying which perils are covered. Reason D is not correct. This pertains to valuation methodology and not to the enumeration of covered perils. Question 9. A warehouse insured under an open perils commercial property policy developed mold and fungi damage after prolonged moisture intrusion. The insurer invoked the fungi exclusion, while the insured contends that open peril coverage should apply to all risks not specifically excluded. Which statement is correct? A. The claim must be paid because an open peril policy covers all physical losses, unless a named peril lists exclusions. B. Coverage applies only if the fungi resulted directly from a covered water damage peril, not mere moisture intrusion. C. The insurer properly denied the claim because the policy's fungi exclusion applies even under open peril coverage. D. The insurer may pay remediation costs under open perils but deny structural repairs due to the fungi exclusion. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is that the insurer properly denied the claim because the fungi exclusion specifically removes coverage for mold and fungi, even though the policy otherwise covers open perils. Reason A is not correct. Open peril policies cover all risks except those expressly excluded, and fungi is expressly excluded under the fungi exclusion. Reason B is not correct. The fungi exclusion applies regardless of whether the fungi resulted from a covered water peril or general moisture intrusion. Reason D is not correct. The standard fungi exclusion removes both structural and remediation coverage, so no sublimit applies only to remediation. Question 10. At common law, to maintain a negligence action, a plaintiff must demonstrate each of the following components except A. The existence of a legal duty owed by the defendant to the plaintiff. B. A breach of the legally imposed standard of care by the defendant. C. A causal nexus between the defendant's act and the plaintiff's harm. D. The foreseeable nature of the harm at the time of the defendant's conduct. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is the foreseeable nature of harm because foreseeability is not one of the four traditional elements of negligence, which are duty, breach, causation, and damages. Reason A is not correct. Existence of a legal duty is one of the essential elements of negligence. Reason B is not correct. A breach of the required standard of care is a core element of negligence. Reason C is not correct. A causal nexus between conduct and harm fulfills the causation element. Question 11. A property owner ignored a visibly diseased branch on a large tree in their yard. During a windstorm, the weakened branch snapped and fell onto an overhead power line, creating a spark that ignited dry grass on a neighboring lot. The fire spread and severely damaged the neighbor's garage. For liability determination, which event is the proximate cause of the garage damage? A. The property owner's failure to inspect and treat the diseased branch. B. The actual breaking and falling of the diseased branch onto the power line. C. The spark generated when the fallen branch struck the power line. D. The ignition of dry grass by the spark from the power line. The correct answer is B. The correct answer is the falling of the diseased branch because it is the primary event that directly set the subsequent hazardous chain of events in motion. Reason A is not correct. Neglecting to treat the branch is a remote cause rather than the immediate event initiating the damage. Reason C is not correct. The spark is an intermediate result of the branch falling rather than the primary initiating event. Reason D is not correct. The grass ignition is a downstream consequence following the branch's fall and spark generation. Question 12. A building manager failed to replace a broken stairwell light for several nights. A tenant, unable to see clearly, tripped on a step and sustained a sprained ankle. While the tenant was being transported to the hospital, the ambulance was involved in an unrelated traffic collision that caused additional injuries. Which harm was reasonably foreseeable from the manager's failure to repair the light? A. The tenant tripping on the unlit stairs and injuring the ankle. B. The ambulance being in a traffic collision en route to the hospital. C. The tenant suffering a broken arm while trying to flag down a ride. D. A passerby being struck by the tenant as the tenant fell. The correct answer is A. The correct answer is the tenant's trip and ankle injury because inadequate lighting directly creates a foreseeable risk of misstepping in that environment. Reason B is not correct. An ambulance collision is an independent subsequent event not directly tied to the stairwell's lighting condition. Reason C is not correct. Flagging a ride is not a likely or direct consequence of walking down unlit stairs. Reason D is not correct. A bystander injury is not a reasonably foreseeable result of a tenant missing a step due to darkness. Question 13. Which statement most accurately defines insurable interest in property insurance coverage? A. The legal right to possess property regardless of any financial stake. B. The ability to shift financial risk to another party by transferring policy rights. C. An economic interest in the preservation of property, such that damage would cause direct financial loss. D. A moral obligation to protect property owned by someone else. The correct answer is C. The correct answer is an economic interest in the property that ensures the insured would suffer a financial loss if the property were damaged, which is the core of insurable interest in property insurance. Reason A is not correct. Legal possession alone is insufficient without a potential financial loss tied to the property. Reason B is not correct. Risk transfer through policy assignment does not itself establish an insurable interest at inception. Reason D is not correct. A moral duty to protect property does not meet the requirement of a pecuniary interest. Question 14. Under a standard property insurance policy, when must insurable interest exist to support a valid claim? A. Only at policy inception. B. Only at the time of application. C. At both policy inception and the time of loss. D. Only at the time of loss. The correct answer is D. The correct answer is that insurable interest must exist at the time of loss to indemnify the insured, as the insurer's obligation depends on the insured's financial interest when the loss occurs. Reason A is not correct. Existence of interest solely at inception does not suffice for indemnification at loss. Reason B is not correct. Interest at application is not relevant to validating a loss-based claim. Reason C is not correct. Requiring interest at both times is overly restrictive. Only interest at loss is essential for a claim. Question 15. Which of the following items is least likely to appear on the declarations page of an insurance policy? A. Description of the insured locations. B. Policy effective and expiration dates. C. Coverage limit amounts. D. Provisions of the insuring agreement. The correct answer is D. The insuring agreement provisions are found in the insuring agreement section of the policy, not on the declarations page, which only summarizes coverages, limits, premiums, and key policy data. Reason A is not correct. That element is included on the declarations page, so it would not be absent from that section. Reason B is not correct. Policy effective and expiration dates are part of the declarations page, so that information would be present. Reason C is not correct. Coverage limit amounts are listed on the declarations page, so that choice would appear there. Question 16. In a standard property and casualty insurance declarations page, under which heading would an adjuster find the dates that define the policy's coverage duration? A. Insuring agreement section. B. Definitions and terminology section. C. Conditions and obligations section. D. Policy period section. The correct answer is D. The policy period section on the declarations page specifically lists the effective and expiration dates that define the coverage timeframe, distinguishing it from other policy parts. Reason A is not correct. The insuring agreement section outlines insurer obligations and is not where coverage dates are found. Reason B is not correct. The definitions section provides policy definitions and does not list coverage dates. Reason C is not correct. The conditions section details policyholder duties and is not the location of date fields. Question 17. Which section of a property casualty insurance policy serves as the grant of coverage by stipulating the insurer's obligations, covered perils, and policy limits? A. Insuring agreement. B. Conditions section. C. Exclusion section. D. Declaration section. The correct answer is A. The insuring agreement is the contractual clause that grants coverage and defines the insurer's obligations, covered perils, and limits. Reason B is not correct. Conditions set policy terms and duties but do not create coverage obligations. Reason C is not correct. Exclusions list what is not covered rather than grant coverage. Reason D is not correct. This section identifies policy period, named insured, and coverages but does not grant coverage. Question 18. What is the primary purpose of the conditions section in a property casualty insurance policy? A. Lists the perils insured. B. Outline the duties of the insured and insurer. C. Set the coverage limits and amounts payable. D. Specify the policy premium and rating factors. The correct answer is B. The conditions section outlines the obligations and procedures that both the insured and insurer must follow when filing and handling claims, such as notice requirements and proof of loss. Reason A is not correct. Listing insured perils is a function of the insuring agreement, not the conditions. Reason C is not correct. Coverage limits and amounts are established in the insuring agreement, not here. Reason D is not correct. Premium and rating factors are disclosed in the declarations, not the conditions. Question 19. After repeated roof leaks cause a mold infestation in a storefront, the policyholder's commercial property insurer denies the claim citing the mold exclusion. What is the fundamental purpose of the exclusion section in this insurance contract? A. To carve out losses that the insured may insure separately through endorsements or other policies. B. To restrict coverage to non-catastrophic events, limiting payouts and high-severity losses. C. To delineate perils or loss types excluded by the policy, capping insurers' exposure and guiding premium rates. D. To impose regulated maintenance duties on the insured as a condition for coverage eligibility. The correct answer is C. The exclusion section delineates which perils or specific loss types are not covered, thereby capping the insurer's potential liability and guiding premium determination. It does not establish separate endorsements, categorize catastrophe exposures, or impose maintenance requirements. Reason A is not correct. This describes obtaining separate endorsements rather than limiting the insurer's core liability through exclusions. Reason B is not correct. Exclusions apply to all specified perils, not only catastrophic events. Reason D is not correct. Maintenance duties are outlined in policy conditions, not in the exclusion section. Question 20. Actual cash value in property insurance is best defined as which of the following? A. Cost to replace the property minus depreciation for wear and tear. B. Cost to replace the property at today's prices without any depreciation adjustment. C. Value agreed upon by insurer and insured as stated in the policy. D. Fair market value of the property based on comparable sales at time of loss. The correct answer is A. Actual cash value is determined by taking the replacement cost of damaged property and deducting depreciation for wear, age, or obsolescence. Reason B is not correct. This option omits the deduction for depreciation, which is essential to the actual cash value calculation. Reason C is not correct. This describes an agreed value policy, not the actual cash value method. Reason D is not correct. This refers to market value based on comparable sales rather than replacement cost less depreciation. Enjoyed this practice test? Tap like, hit subscribe, and share it with a classmate. Got a question we should tweak? Comment below, we read them all. Find full practice exam books in the description or at ExamPrep.School.